Okay, let's dig into this. Monday, April 28th, 2025.
Yeah.
Suddenly, millions of people across Spain, Portugal, and even parts of southern France are just plunged into
A
darkness.
massive power outage.
Yeah.
Just huge.
Right. We're talking Madrid, Barcelona, Lisbon, Porto, major cities, basically grinding to a halt.
Mm-hmm.
So for this deep dive, we've gathered, news reports, bits from the grid operators, and some expert takes on grid security.
And resilience, or maybe the lack of it sometimes.
Exactly. So our mission today is really to unpack what went down, explore the potential causes, the whys, understand the immediate impact, the
Then
ripples.
what it signals about our infrastructure vulnerabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to provide clarity, without getting bogged down in jargon, just the crucial stuff.
The scale is the real key here, isn't it? How one event can cause such widespread disruption.
Totally. So when exactly did this all kick off?
Okay, so the precise time seems to be 12:33 p.m. CET, the Central European summertime.
Right around lunchtime.
Yeah, exactly. And the lights go out across the Iberian Peninsula, so Spain and Portugal
And parts of France, too.
and parts of southern France, yeah. Specifically reports from the Basque Country region. Brief outages there, but still part of it.
Interesting. Were there places nearby that weren't affected?
Yeah, that's actually quite telling. The reports confirm the Canary Islands, the Balearic Islands, and Gibraltar were fine. They stayed online.
Huh. So what does that suggest?
Well, suggests the initial fault probably wasn't like a system-wide collapse across all of Europe's interconnected grid.
Okay.
It points more towards something localized, originating perhaps within that specific Iberian-French interconnection zone.
Right. So interconnected, but not like one single fuse box for the whole continent.
Precisely. There are segments and protection.
And the immediate chaos.
Wow. Reading these accounts, it sounds pretty intense.
Oh, definitely.
In Spain, you had train services just stopping.
Dead hold.
Imagine being on the Madrid subway when the power goes. They had to evacuate people from the tunnel.
Must have been terrifying. And traffic lights out, causing, complete gridlock in places.
Standard procedure in a blackout, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Mass confusion.
Even Madrid's main airport, Barajas, had disruptions. And get this, the Mutua Madrid Open, the big tennis tournament.
No way.
Yep, interrupted mid-play, power cut.
Huh. You really don't think about everything that relies on electricity until it's gone.
It just highlights that constant hum we take for granted, doesn't it?
It really does. And Portugal wasn't spared either. The situation was just as bad there.
What happened in Lisbon?
Well, Lisbon's metro system, the trams, completely stopped.
Right.
The airport there also had to close temporarily. And maybe more worryingly, reports of major restrictions on mobile networks.
Oh, wow. So communication becomes difficult, too.
Extremely difficult. Imagine trying to call for help or check on family. And of course, hospitals immediately switch to backup generators.
Thank goodness for those.
Absolutely essential. But it really shows how a big blackout can just unravel daily life so quickly. Everything is linked.
So the million-dollar question, then. What actually caused this? Because it seems like there are a few different stories floating around.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. The honest answer is the exact trigger is still under investigation. No definitive word yet.
Okay, but what are the leading theories?
Well, one strong possibility is a straightforward technical fault. Somewhere in that huge, complex web that is the European grid.
Right.
These systems are incredibly intricate, One component failing can, and sometimes does, trigger a cascade.
Like we said, the domino effect.
Exactly. A snag in one spot spreads rapidly.
Okay, that makes sense. But then there was that line from Iberian, the Portuguese grid operator. Something about a rare atmospheric phenomenon.
Yes, that one caught my eye too. RN suggested that might have caused a disruption over in the Spanish grid, which then cascaded.
That sounds, well, a bit vague and unusual. Is there any history of weather causing something this big?
It does sound unusual, yeah. Without more detail, it's hard to say how plausible it is. I mean, obviously, extreme weather can damage infrastructure, high winds, lightning strikes, even extreme heat, stressing the lines.
Sure.
But a rare atmospheric phenomenon causing a grid split across countries that needs more explanation, I think.
And the third possibility, the one everyone worries about.
Cyber attack. It's always on the table these days with critical infrastructure.
Right.
Now, Portuguese officials, at least initially, said they didn't see evidence pointing that way.
Okay.
But Spain's cybersecurity agency, INCB, they're still actively investigating that angle.
So it hasn't been ruled out entirely.
Not definitively, especially from the Spanish side, it seems. Our power grids rely so heavily on digital controls now, they are potential targets. Cybersecurity is just paramount.
It's a bit scary to think about.
It is.
But on the flip side, it does seem like they got things running again remarkably quickly.
That was impressive, wasn't it?
Yeah, by the next morning, Tuesday, they were saying something like 99% restored in Spain, 95% in Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
How did they manage that turnaround so fast after such a massive outage? It suggests some resilience is built in.
Absolutely. It speaks volumes about the recovery protocols and the inherent design, even with its vulnerabilities. A crucial factor was the ability to import power.
From where?
From neighboring countries, mainly France and Morocco in this case. Those interconnections, the big power lines crossing borders, act like lifelines.
Ah, so they could draw power from grids that weren't affected.
Exactly. It allows them to bring areas back online section by section relatively quickly. It really shows the value of that international energy cooperation. It's a vital safety net.
Okay, so we've got a handle on what happened, the immediate fallout, and the potential causes, even if they're still a bit fuzzy.
Right.
But looking forward, how do we stop this kind of thing happening again? What are the experts suggesting?
Yeah, this is where the conversation really shifts to prevention and long-term solutions. And the experts stress, these big blackouts often aren't just one single failure.
It's that chain reaction again.
It's that chain reaction, yeah.
So,
A series of smaller issues cascade. So preventing them needs a multi-layered approach. On the technical side, a big theme is improving grid stability through decentralization.
decentralization. Okay, break that down. Does that mean moving away from huge power plants?
Essentially, yes,
Right.
or at least supplementing them significantly. Instead of relying on a few massive centralized power stations, which are big single points of failure, you move towards a network with many more smaller distributed energy sources.
Like what kind of sources?
Think rooftop solar panels,
Mm.
community battery storage systems, local wind farms, maybe small-scale hydro, lots of smaller interconnected units.
And how does that help prevent a big blackout?
Well, it diversifies the risk. If one small part fails, or even a few small parts, it doesn't automatically jeopardize the entire system.
Ah, I see. So it's like having lots of smaller support beams instead of just a few massive ones holding up the roof.
That's a great analogy. Exactly.
Right.
Fewer critical points of failure, more localized resilience. If one neighborhood's solar goes offline, it doesn't necessarily affect the next town over.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What else is on the technical checklist?
Smart grids. That's another huge area.
We hear that term a lot. What does it actually mean in practice?
It means embedding sensors and communication technology throughout the grid. Think of it like giving the grid a nervous system.
Okay.
These sensors constantly gather real-time data voltage, frequency, power flow, and this data is fed into sophisticated control systems, often using AI.
Right. And the AI does what?
It analyzes the data constantly, looking for anomalies, potential
Right.
issues, even very subtle ones, before they become big problems.
So it can spot trouble brewing.
Exactly. And not just spot it, but potentially take automatic action. It might reroute power or isolate a fault or adjust generation levels all very quickly, sometimes faster than human operators could react.
So the grid could almost, heal itself, or at least protect itself.
In a limited way, yes, or at
Mhm.
least take rapid preventative steps. Then there's simply increasing redundancy.
Yeah, more backup options.
Yep. More interconnectors between countries, between regions. As we saw in the restoration phase, these are crucial for bringing in emergency power quickly when one area goes down.
Right. The French and Moroccan power helped Spain and Portugal.
Precisely. The more pathways you have for power to flow, the more resilient the system is to localized failures.
Makes sense. And you mentioned cybersecurity earlier.
Cannot emphasize that enough.
Uh-huh.
Modern grids are heavily reliant on digital control systems, supervisory control, and data acquisition or SCADA systems.
Which makes them hackable.
Potentially, yes. So enhanced cybersecurity is non-negotiable. That means constant security updates, patching vulnerabilities, segmenting networks so a breach in one area can't easily spread,
Okay.
and having really robust emergency response plans specifically for cyber incidents. Training staff, running drills.
And one more thing. You mentioned something about getting the grid back up after a blackout.
Ah, yes. Black start capability. That's crucial for faster recovery.
Like a black start.
It's the ability of some power plants to start up on their own without relying on external power from the grid. Think of it like having a built-in generator to kickstart the main engine.
Okay.
These black start units can then energize small sections of the grid, which are then used to start up other, larger power plants, gradually bringing the whole system back online. It speeds up that resynchronization process significantly.
Wow. Okay. So a lot of technical stuff involved in keeping the lights on and getting them back on.
Absolutely. It's incredibly complex engineering.
But let's zoom out a bit. When something like this does happen, despite the prevention efforts,
Huh?
what are the wider impacts beyond the immediate chaos of stopped trains and dark traffic lights?
Yeah, the impacts ripple outwards. We can think about them in, say, short, medium, and long-term
That's
categories.
short term.
Short term, we've touched on some already. The traffic chaos, communication problems, cell towers need power, internet infrastructure needs power.
Right. No Wi-Fi, maybe no phone signal.
Exactly. Then there are issues with shopping and supplies. Payment systems often go down credit card machines, ATMs,
Oh yeah, cash becomes king suddenly, if you can get it.
if you can get it, and food spoilage in homes and supermarkets if the outage lasts long enough. Plus, serious safety risks. While big hospitals usually have good backup power.
Smaller clinics might not, or other critical systems.
Smaller clinics, traffic control systems, water pumping stations in some cases, they might be more vulnerable. And then there's the immediate economic hit.
How so?
Factories stop production, businesses have to close, supply chains get disrupted. It all adds up very quickly in terms of lost revenue and productivity.
Okay, those are pretty immediate and disruptive. What about the medium-term effects once the power's back on?
Well, one potential medium-term impact is an erosion of public trust. If people feel like the basic infrastructure isn't reliable, that can have knock-on effects.
Yeah, you start to worry if it'll happen again.
Exactly. We might also see energy price spikes. Sometimes, after a major disruption, there can be short-term supply issues or costs associated with getting everything back to normal, which can filter down to consumers.
Hmm.
And then there's the cost of fixing whatever caused it and upgrading the system to prevent repeats. That often requires significant investment.
Which someone has to pay for, right? Taxpayers or higher bills?
Usually some combination, yeah. So expect debates about funding grid improvements and resilience measures.
And then, looking even further out the long term, can an event like this actually change things fundamentally?
Oh, definitely. Big systemic shocks like this often do reshape political discussions and policy priorities.
In what way?
Issues like energy autonomy suddenly become much more prominent, reducing reliance on energy imports from other places.
Right, countries wanting more control over their own power supply.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the push for more decentralized energy, those local solar and battery systems we talked about, often gets a boost. Same for cybersecurity. It shoots right up the agenda.
So it could accelerate some trends.
It could absolutely accelerate the shift in the energy mix. More urgency behind renewables, more focus on energy storage, partly for climate reasons, but also increasingly for resilience and security, reducing dependence on complex, potentially fragile, interconnected fossil fuel systems.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, how incredibly dependent we are on electricity for just everything.
Everything. Modern life runs on it.
And how vulnerable we might be when it goes away. It makes you consider your own situation. What would you do?
Right. Do you have basics like water, some non-perishable food, a flashlight, maybe a battery bank for your phone?
Yeah.
How would you get information?
Simple things, but easy to overlook until something happens.
Absolutely. And it just underscores that interconnectedness. An issue seemingly localized to one part of the grid ripples out to affect transport, communication, the economy, safety.
Our whole way of life, really.
Pretty much. Resilience isn't just about the big power companies. It involves individual and community preparedness, too.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the main points then. We had this massive blackout across Spain, Portugal, parts of France, millions affected, cities disrupted.
Right. The cause is still being investigated. Could be technical, atmospheric, possibly even cyber, though that's less certain right now.
Immediate impacts were huge: transport, communication, health services, the economy. But restoration was relatively fast, thanks partly to power imports.
And experts are pointing towards solutions like decentralizing power generation, building smarter grids, increasing redundancy through interconnectors, bolstering cybersecurity, and improving those black start capabilities.
And the impacts go beyond the technical short-term chaos, medium-term trust and cost issues, and potential long-term shifts in energy policy towards more autonomy and renewables.
That covers it pretty well.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, something to chew on. Given how much our modern world leans on electricity, what other complex systems that we see as stable, maybe the internet itself, global supply chains, financial networks, might also be vulnerable to these kinds of cascading failures?
That's a big question.
And following on from that, what steps can we take, as individuals, as societies, to build more resilience? How do we prepare for these kinds of unexpected large-scale disruptions in an increasingly interconnected world?